Why do the most unqualified people end up ruling over the qualified? Why does society reward charm over competence? In this video, we'll uncover the bitter truth behind modern leadership failures, why fools rise, why the wise stay sidelined, and how power often chooses the loudest voice over the sharpest mind. Inspired by the timeless logic of Machiavelli, this is a lesson not just in politics, but in life. What if I told you that intelligence is not a requirement for power? You've been raised to believe that leadership is a reward for merit, that only the most capable, the most thoughtful, the most strategic minds rise to rule. But history and today's reality tell a very different story. Power, in its rawest form, is not a trophy for the wisest. It is a tool, a mask, a game of perception. And in this game, wisdom often loses to appearance. Think carefully who commands the room. Is it the most informed speaker, the one who carefully considers both sides of an argument, or is it the one who speaks with confidence, even if every word is empty? Confidence, that's the real currency, not facts, not depth, not insight. Confidence is intoxicating. People would rather follow someone who is wrong but certain than someone who is right but hesitant. This is the first trick of the foolish man in power. He replaces wisdom with certainty, and it works. He may not understand diplomacy, strategy, or policy, but he understands spectacle. He knows how to project dominance. He knows how to wear the costume of a leader. He knows how to fake competence just enough to pass the test. And the test isn't hard, because most people don't question, they assume. You see, in the theater of power, the audience wants a performance. They don't want a philosopher, king. They want someone who looks like a ruler, sounds like a ruler, acts like a ruler. The fool understands this, and he uses it. He learns the rhythm of speeches. He repeats simple phrases with conviction. He speaks in absolutes, never in maybes, and people listen, not because he makes sense, but because he sounds like he knows what he's doing. This is how perception becomes reality. Once the illusion is established, it's very hard to break. The masses don't dig deeper. They don't look at resumes, read books, or study character. They react viscerally, emotionally, and the fool, knowing this, makes sure to always stay one step ahead in the perception game. He surrounds himself with symbols of power, expensive suits, loud media, public victories, no matter how trivial. He stages moments, creates drama, turns even his failures into stories of triumph. Every error is reframed as strategy. Every weakness is repackaged as strength, and it works again and again. People begin to repeat his phrases. They defend him, not with logic, but with loyalty. They say, at least he's real, at least he's not like the others. And just like that, the illusion becomes armor. What's dangerous is that this illusion is self-reinforcing. The more people believe in his power, the more power he accumulates, not because he is making better decisions, but because belief itself becomes power. This is the lie that holds the system together, that if someone has power, they must have earned it. And so the foolish leader, once in place, is treated as a wise one, not because he is wise, but because people want to believe he must be. But understand this, in politics, belief matters more than truth. People don't follow the most intelligent. They follow the most visible, the most charismatic, the most confident, the man who talks the loudest, the man who claims to have answers, even if those answers are shallow, even if they are dangerous, and behind all of it is one simple fact: he does not need to be wise. He only needs to look like he is. Wisdom requires patience, doubt, self-awareness. A wise man often hesitates because he knows how complex the world truly is. He is cautious with his words because he understands their weight. He doesn't pretend to know everything because he knows the cost of arrogance. But the fool is fearless, not because he's brave, but because he's blind to consequences. He rushes forward without understanding the terrain, and ironically, that recklessness can look like courage. That arrogance can look like strength, and so the people choose him. They mistake his loud voice for leadership, his overconfidence for competence, his stubbornness for resolve. They cheer his simplicity because it feels clear in a world of confusion. They call him authentic because he lacks depth. They call him bold because he ignores nuance. They call him powerful because he never admits weakness. But none of these things are signs of wisdom. They are signs of perception. And perception, my friend, is the great counterfeit of power. It is the cloak that disguises the fool, the tool that blinds the masses, the illusion that convinces the world that wisdom and authority are always linked, when in fact they rarely are. And so the fool rises, not because he deserves to, not because he understands leadership, but because the performance was convincing enough. Why do the loudest voices win? Why do the simplest slogans echo louder than complex truths? Because the masses do not hunger for wisdom. They hunger for comfort, and nothing comforts more than simplicity. In a world overwhelmed by uncertainty, where reality feels chaotic and the future unpredictable, people seek clarity. Not the kind born from deep thought, but the kind that comes fast, easy, and without pain. The kind that doesn't require them to question their own beliefs. The kind that feels right, not necessarily is right. This is why foolish people often ascend to power. They do not burden the public with complex solutions or difficult truths. They offer something better, simple answers to complicated problems. The wise know that reality is layered, contradictory, and nuanced. But the fool ignores the layers. He picks a side. He points a finger. He speaks in absolutes, and the crowd cheers. Simplicity is seductive. It promises control. It turns 1,000 moving parts into a single cause. It erases doubt. It creates a clear enemy, and in the chaos of life, that is a relief. That's what makes a foolish leader powerful. He sells the illusion of understanding. The masses, by nature, do not want to be taught. They want to be told. They do not want philosophy. They want prophecy. They want someone who speaks like a savior, not a scholar. The fool senses this and he adjusts his tone. He does not explain. He declares. He does not explore. He blames. He reduces the world into a story and casts himself as the hero. He says, I alone can fix it. He says, they are the problem. He says, follow me and I'll give you peace. And the crowd listens. Not because he is right, but because he is clear. Clarity, even if false, is more powerful than truth wrapped in complexity. The wise man who carefully weighs all sides appears indecisive. He says, it depends. He says, let's examine. But the fool, he says, this is how it is, and slams his fist for effect. And the people love it because they don't want to think. They want to feel. They don't want to analyze policy. They want to hear promises. And the fool is a master of promises, vague, repetitive, emotional, promises that are not made to be kept, but to be believed. And belief spreads like fire, especially when it feels easy. There is no reward for intellectual honesty in a crowd. The leader who says, this will take time, is booed off stage. The one who says, I'll fix it tomorrow, gets the applause. The leader who says, we're all partly to blame, is attacked. The one who says, it's their fault, becomes the people's champion. This is the tragedy of democracy, monarchy, republic, every system. The public, in large numbers, prefers the illusion of certainty over the discomfort of complexity. They do not study history. They do not read legislation. They do not research policy. They react, and the leader who learns how to control their reaction controls them entirely. Fools are brilliant at this. They speak in the language of the people, not to enlighten, but to seduce. They pretend to be simple, relatable, like one of them, but what they really are is calculated, not intelligent in the philosophical sense, but cunning. They know how to stir emotion, how to trigger outrage, how to weaponize language, and when someone wise stands up, when someone tries to explain the truth, they are mocked, ignored, or labeled as elitist, out of touch, boring, because the truth is slow, and the crowd moves fast. This is how the foolish gain power, not through logic, but through tempo. They keep things moving too fast for reflection. They distract before doubt can form. They attack before questions can arise. They turn every critique into betrayal, every opponent into a villain, every failure into a conspiracy. And the public, too overwhelmed to think, too afraid to admit they've been fooled, clings even harder to the simple narrative they've been fed. You see, the masses do not demand proof, they demand passion. They are not drawn to reason, they are drawn to rhythm, repetition, and reassurance. And the foolish leader understands that a catchy lie will travel farther than a complicated truth. So he speaks in slogans, chants, and certainty. He tells them what they want to hear, not what they need to know. And as long as he keeps the message simple, keeps the blame external, and keeps the emotions high, he remains untouchable. Not because he is right, but because he is clear, fast, loud, and above all simple. There's a secret most people never see, a truth hidden not behind closed doors, but in plain sight, so obvious, so consistent, that it becomes invisible. And it is this: many of the world's most foolish leaders are not truly leading, they are being led. You think the man in the spotlight holds the power. You think the one who signs the decrees is the one who writes the rules. But real power, true power, rarely needs to be seen. It prefers shadows. It prefers silence. It prefers a fool standing in front, smiling, waving, taking the blame or the credit, while the real decisions are made somewhere else. This is why fools so often rise to power, not because they are strong, but because they are malleable, not because they think independently, but because they don't, not because they outsmarted others, but because someone smarter chose them for a reason. They are useful, and usefulness is the currency of the powerful. The elite, the true elite, do not want to rule directly. Ruling directly requires exposure, accountability, attention. It brings risk. What they want is influence without visibility, control without consequence, power without the weight of responsibility. And for that, they need a mask, a front, a puppet. Someone loud enough to distract the public and foolish enough not to see the strings tied to his back. The fool becomes the perfect instrument. He is desperate for approval, hungry for legacy, addicted to fame. He doesn't read the fine print. He doesn't ask hard questions. He trusts the flattery of those who position themselves close to him. And those people, the advisors, the donors, the unseen hands, guide him exactly where they want him to go. They do not need him to understand. They only need him to obey. Behind the curtain, deals are made, policies are shaped, laws are written, by people you'll never see. The fool merely signs the paper, stands at the podium, faces the camera, and believes in his arrogance that he is in control, but he is not. He is a shield, a lightning rod, a decoy, and the beauty of it all. The people blame him or praise him. They spend their time arguing over his tweets, his speeches, his scandals, all while the architects of the system remain untouched. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system. From ancient courts to modern parliaments, the pattern repeats. The king had ministers, the emperor had viziers, the president has donors, consultants, lobbyists, and in every era, the one who appears to lead is often the one being led. The truly intelligent, the Machiavellians behind the throne, understand that a competent, thinking leader is a threat. A man who questions, who resists, who sees through the game, that man is dangerous. He cannot be easily steered. He may expose the machine. He may go off script. But a fool is perfect because he doesn't even know there's a script. He believes the applause is for him. He believes the decisions are his. He believes he is changing the world. Meanwhile, the elite change the rules, secure their fortunes, reshape reality, and always stay invisible. And if the fool fails, no problem. He can be replaced. Discredited, shamed, thrown to the public like a sacrifice. Another face will rise. Another actor will step into the role, because the role matters more than the man, and the real rulers, they never leave the room. It is a genius form of control. The people believe they are watching the king, the president, the ruler, but what they're really watching is a puppet show, a beautifully designed illusion where the front man says what he's told, while behind him, true power pulls the strings. And the more foolish he is, the better, because a fool doesn't see the trap. A fool doesn't ask who built the platform he stands on. A fool doesn't recognize manipulation. He calls it loyalty. He surrounds himself with sycophants, not thinkers. He trusts the wrong voices. He repeats what he's told, believing it came from his own mind. This is not just politics. This is architecture, a structure designed to be led by the led, a throne built not for the wise, but for the weak. Because the wise ask why, but the weak, they just perform. And in this grand design, the elite remain untouchable. They feed the fool just enough power to keep him loyal. They inflate his ego, craft his image, whisper his speeches. And in return, he gives them what they want most, his obedience. There is a reason the wisest people rarely sit on thrones, not because they're incapable, not because they lack ambition, but because the very system that governs society is built to resist them. True wisdom doesn't preserve the order, it threatens it. You see, every society is a delicate balance of illusions, narratives constructed over time to maintain power structures, protect wealth, and keep the majority obedient. The wise man is dangerous, not because he rebels, but because he understands. He sees through the curtain. He asks the wrong questions. He sees too clearly, and those who benefit from the illusion cannot afford clarity. Fools keep the system intact, the wise crack it open. When a wise person enters a position of power, something begins to shift. He does not blindly follow tradition. He does not accept authority without scrutiny. He questions motives, challenges institutions, pulls apart the myths that keep the masses docile. And in doing so, he threatens more than policy. He threatens the entire foundation. Wisdom brings discomfort. It disrupts, it complicates, it exposes uncomfortable truths. It reveals that the rules are often lies, the leaders often masks, and the systems often rigged to protect the few. And when people begin to see that, when they begin to think for themselves, the house of cards begins to shake. This is why the existing order resists wisdom. The wise leader cannot be easily controlled. He does not respond to flattery. He is not seduced by spectacle. He does not serve hidden interests. He seeks truth, and truth is not profitable. Truth does not sell. Truth does not win elections. Truth demands responsibility, and the world fears responsibility more than anything. Now imagine a truly wise ruler. He tells the people not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. He tells them that change requires sacrifice, that growth requires patience, that real solutions are slow, painful, and uncertain. He offers no fantasy, and the crowd turns on him, because the crowd does not want reality. It wants reassurance. It wants someone to blame, someone to worship, someone to promise miracles without effort. And when the wise man refuses to play that role, he becomes the villain. The very qualities that make him wise, his honesty, his caution, his foresight, become the reasons he is rejected. They say he is weak. They say he is cold. They say he lacks charisma. In truth, he simply lacks the willingness to lie. And so the system turns against him. The media ignores him. The advisors betray him. The crowd ridicules him. The elites isolate him. Every word he says is twisted. Every act of reason is framed as elitism. Every warning he gives is labeled fear, mongering. Why? Because he is not preserving the order. He is questioning it. The existing order survives on momentum, on blind repetition, on everyone playing their part without asking why. The fool plays along, the wise man asks too much, he breaks the rhythm. And the rhythm is sacred to those in power. The fool, for all his ignorance, is useful. He reinforces the myths. He distracts from the corruption. He waves the flag and follows the script. But the wise man, he burns the script, and those who wrote it see him as a threat, not to themselves, but to the entire play. Even the people who would benefit from his wisdom reject him, because wisdom requires effort. It demands that they think, that they change, that they accept hard truths, and most people would rather remain comfortable than be correct. This is why wise people often remain in the background, not because they are afraid, but because they know the cost of challenging the structure from within. They know the resistance they will face. They know that every institution, from governments to corporations to cultures, is designed to filter out the truly thoughtful before they ever get close to power. The system does not select for intelligence. It selects for obedience, for simplicity, for charisma without depth, for loyalty over vision. The wise are seen as unstable, as dangerous, as unpredictable. Because they cannot be bought, manipulated, or made into a symbol, and so they are silenced, not always with force, sometimes with mockery, sometimes with neglect, sometimes with polite dismissal. The world simply moves on without them. Their books are unread, their ideas labeled unrealistic, their warnings ignored, until it's too late, because when the wise speak, they do not shout, they do not scream, they do not seduce, they offer perspective. And perspective is the one thing a corrupt order cannot afford. So now you see the full design. Fools rise, not because they are fit to lead, but because power does not demand wisdom. It demands the illusion of strength. And in a world shaped by perception, the loudest fool outshines the quiet genius. The masses reward simplicity. They fear complexity. They choose the man who entertains over the one who educates. And in their hunger for clarity, they surrender themselves to those who offer easy answers to impossible questions. Behind the scenes, true power doesn't rest in the fool's hands. He is only the front, the mask. The elites pull the strings. They install those who are too blind to resist and too eager to obey. The throne becomes a stage, the crown a costume, and the ruler a character in someone else's play. And should a wise man attempt to enter the game, the system expels him. His mind is too sharp, his questions too dangerous, his presence too disruptive, because wisdom does not serve the order it threatens to dismantle it. This is why the world remains upside down, why the foolish are praised, why the wise are cast aside, and why the game continues, not because it must, but because it was designed to.